This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Welcome to the I Saved You, Now Do the Dishes podcast. I'm author and speaker Carrie Severson. In each episode, I'll share stories and tips from my experience with caregiving and advocacy through my husband's cancer journey. Hi, welcome back to the I Saved You, Now Do the Dishes podcast. Thanks for being here. So like I said last time, from here on out, every podcast should come with a trigger warning. It's going to get gooey and ooey and hard and harsh. Today's no exception. Today, let's talk about Narcan. So we're Tuesday. It's Tuesday, the 5th week of my husband's cancer treatment. We had just gotten into a pretty deep conversation about him needing a feeding tube. He disagreed. The GI department called anyway, and turned out they wouldn't be able to see us for at least 2 months. So the following day, I wake up at like 4:30, 4 a.m., something like that. He fell asleep on the couch. I was so exhausted, mentally drained, physically exhausted. If he did need help in the middle of the night, I never heard him. I probably went to bed at like 6 a.m., woke up in my clothes. I let him sleep, continue sleeping. I went about my morning, made myself coffee, probably showered, and then started to hear him stir around 6, and he was in incredible pain. So he got himself an oxy. I recorded it on the whiteboard, and then 20 minutes later, he started his like bathroom shower ritual. He would steam up our guest bath and get it to the point where it was, it looked like an 80s horror movie where steam was coming out from underneath the door, and he came out with just a towel around his waist, and he looked so thin. His stomach was concaved. I could see his rib cage. But the steam helped him be able to pull out scabs in his throat. And at that point, he felt like his throat was closing up. So he did that so that he could swallow the gabapentin pills and the liquid magic mouthwash. I didn't think to ask for liquid drugs. Like, I'm sure somebody could have given him gabapentin in a liquid form. I didn't ask for it. So I've said this before. If you are working in caregiving for somebody who has trouble swallowing right out of the gate, don't mess with the pills. Get liquid or get shots, because they come that way as well. So he gets everything down, takes a little bit of water. He drinks a little bit of a shake, probably half a shake, and then falls back to sleep until we have to go to the hospital. That day he had an IV. Gratefully, they ordered him an IV infusion, saline. He just got a bag which we were so grateful. I was so grateful for. Just knowing that he was actually getting nutrients, because the saline actually does have vitamins in it and minerals. He had chemo and he had radiation. So he gets the IV injection first, what's it called? Infusion. He gets the infusion first. Then radiation. Then there's a break. And then he's got chemo. So in the break, my mom met us. We were hanging out in the cafeteria. So he was pouring lidocaine on vanilla pudding because everyone was on his case about calories. I was so tired of having the same conversation. I was so tired of fighting him on, calories. And after having the conversation with the GI department the day before, really felt like our hands were tied behind our backs because they weren't able to help him with the feeding tube. So he squirt a lot of lidocaine on the top of a spoonful of pudding and then take the pudding. His eyes would bug out of his head. He had been in so much pain, but he was doing it, to show us that he didn't need a feeding tube. He could do it. He could eat. He could get calories in. He wouldn't have to get fit for a new helmet. He wasn't going to die. He was really showing us what he could do. I was just full of piss and vinegar. I hated everyone, everything. So Gavin goes upstairs for chemo, and my mom and I just visit. It's so hard to sit still. I've got so much rage running through me. Fight or flight is kicking in. I feel like I'm crawling out of my skin. And she's like, why don't you just go hang out with your husband? And I'm like, the chemo floor is the last place I want to be. Like, that place is, it's not comforting. It's not peaceful. It's not quiet. But she's like, just go be with him. Just go talk to him. So before I go, I take a spoonful of his pudding, forgetting that he had lidocaine all over it. And instantly I was like, fuck. I couldn't feel my mouth. It tasted so gross. And, I just pray that I don't start drooling on myself, pretty much. But I make my way up to the chemo. And again, I've said before, like, I'm not sure how it is at where you go if you're in this cancer journey, but they were bays. And so I walk in, check in for Gavin. They tell me what bay he's in. There's no curtain. It's like, let's say bay 15. And so bay 14 would be next to me. And then 12 and 13 would be across from us. They were like cubicles. The actual wall was shorter than me, so I could look over and see what everyone was doing. And so I walked back to Gavin's thing. The woman across from us was getting chemo, didn't have a shirt on, so it was just her bra and her jeans. No one offered, and I'm just like, does she need a blanket? No, she was probably hot, whatever. So I sit down. Gavin's almost passed out at this point. And he's already hooked up to something. The bag is probably halfway gone. I kind of shake Gavin. Hey, honey, I'm here. And he nods and he gives me a thumbs up. Okay. So I sit down in like an uncomfortable chair, try to make myself comfortable and as small as possible, because the chemo chair is really big and all the equipment is in there. And even though they didn't let you have sound on anything, there is, like, in this particular bay, there's a computer that you could hook up to some movie, but it was I didn't bother. So the nurse comes in, introduces herself. I introduce myself, and she squeezes Baggins' bag and says something about, okay, this one's almost done. I'll go get the next. And I'm like, is this saline? And she's like, oh, he said he didn't need any. And I'm like, well, he did have it earlier today, but is this Benadryl? And she's like, yep, it's Benadryl. And she called it the juice, giving him the juice. The Benadryl was the thing that they gave him ahead of time before the actual chemotherapy drug. And he had 2 drugs. And I'm like, he's been up here a while. I mean, I waited a good amount of time in the cafeteria with my mom because his chemo sessions were like 3 hours. I probably waited 45 minutes. So I was surprised that he was still getting Benadryl. All right. So the juice ends and Gavin gets hooked up to the next bag of stuff. And before they hook him up, they have to scan it in. So it's on their record. And then they have to ask you your date of birth and your name. But they couldn't wake Gavin up. So I gave it to them. And I was kind of pissed that I'm like, he's sleeping. Let him sleep. Why are you trying to wake him up? So date of birth, who he is. What else do you want to know? You know, like his calories, his favorite color, the last time he took a poop. Like, leave the man alone. I have all this information, right? That's what it is to be a caregiver. You know everything about the person, even the things you don't want to know. You find out. You become crazy intimate with this person. It will make or break you. And there's not a stronger relationship than that one, for better or worse. Man. So not long after they hooked him up to this second, whatever bag I witnessed the second one to be, I noticed Gavin's breathing changes and he sounds like a drowning dinosaur. Like, this isn't right. My intuition was like crawling. My skin was prickly. I'm like, there's something wrong here. So he's moaning and groaning and sounds like he's drowning, like he's physically. And I kind of shake him and he wouldn't wake up. And the nurse saw me try to wake him up. And she's like, just let him be. He's fine. So I actually stand up. And again, the cubicles are so short that I could actually talk to her and lean over. And I'm like, he sounds like there's something wrong here. And she walks into his bay and listens to him. And she's like, oh, he's just, he's sleeping. He's sound asleep. It's okay. He's okay. And I'm like, there's something not right here. I knew it. I just knew it. The mucus ropes, right, would block his airways. That sounded different than this. This was like he was unconscious. He was in some other place. And I just sat there for the next 2 hours and listened to him breathe. And I tried to wake him up a couple of additional times. I was so freaked out. So he needs one more bag. She comes in again. Date of birth, who he is. She couldn't wake him up, so I said it. And I said again, he normally doesn't sound like this. And she laughed. He's just out of it. Don't worry about it. All right, well, okay. I didn't feel like leaving that time, and I hate the chemo floor. But by the time that second bag of chemo drugs was close to being done, she comes in. She notices that he's sweating profusely at this point. I mean, he's just drenched. And she's like, yeah, I'm a little worried about you getting him out of here. And she said it, matter of fact, without actually looking at me, and left the bay. What? What are you talking about? You're worried about what? So I feel like every muscle in my body sort of contract. I'm literally like sitting higher because my quads and my butt are like as tight as possible. I'm clenching my fingertips into the palm of my hand. I should have requested them to try to wake him. I should have done something then. Let's stop chemo. This is wrong. Something's wrong. I should have said it. I said it. They didn't fucking believe me. So he's all done. They unplug him. And then it was time for him to wake up. And he wouldn't wake up. So the nurse tries really gently at first. Okay, honey, it's time to go. Gavin, it's time to wake up. All right, sweetheart, your session's done. We're all done. You can get up now. He didn't budge. He was laying on his side, sweat dripping, physically, literally dripping off of him. He looked like he had just played a pickup ball game in the dead of summer in like Minnesota. It looked like he had just gone swimming. He was drenched from head to toe. His jeans were discolored. So I shook him pretty hard at this point. And she went and she got her boss. And I'm like shaking his whole body back and forth. Gavin, you got to get up now. Gavin, get up. The big nurse comes in and she's like, how much oxy is he on? And I said 10 milliliters, whatever. And she says, when was the last time he took his pain meds? And I'm like, well, we've been here all day. So he would have taken it at least once since we've been here. And she's like, and she didn't even look at me. And she's like, well, let's see if he's running a temp. No temp. Okay, sweetheart, you're done. And she takes her fist and she's rubbing it on his sternum, which I think they actually called it a sternum rub. And she's doing it so hard. I can see her gritting her teeth. Okay, Gavin. And she's shouting at him. She's so loud that the rest of the chemo floor, I can't hear a single thing. I can't hear any of the other conversations. I can't hear any of the alarms, any of the crying, any of it. I can't hear any of it. The rest of the floor disappeared. All that was really there was my husband unconscious, unable to get up. And these nurses that I said several times, something's wrong, are now looking at me sideways. I've said before that like I had several out-of-body experiences during his cancer treatment, and I'm pretty sure I had one then as well, because I was watching her, the big boss lady, shaking him. His whole body was like a worm. He was just like this. I could feel the skin crawling on my back, but I was paralyzed. Until she's like, okay, I'm seeing him open his eyes. And I lean over his body and I look into his eyes, and his pupils are like pins. They were a pencil head. And I screamed. I'm picking up his feet. I'm dropping him. I'm slapping his bare belly. I'm slapping his ass. Okay, Gavin, you got to get up. You got to get up. And he just immediately fell back to sleep. I cussed a lot at that point. He looked lost. He looked like he overdosed. His breathing changed. It was very shallow. I knew something wasn't right. I told her something wasn't right. So they talk to each other outside the bay, come back in, and they're like, well, we gave him Benadryl. He's having a reaction to the oxy. And here are your options. They're like, we call this snowed. So technically, he can be admitted as an overdose patient. Or we give him Narcan, which would pull off all of the pain management, all the pain pieces off his receptors, wake him up, immediately send him into incredible pain, but it would bring him out of this. And I'm like, is that it? Those are my choices? Admit him to the hospital as an overdose patient, even though you're telling me he's having a reaction to the Benadryl because he's on oxy? This fucking place gave him oxy. Like, I was pissed. And she's like, well, we've got additional patients here. You can hang out for probably another hour and see if he wakes up on his own. What the fuck? This place sucks. I hate this place. I hated the place we were at this point. This was my make it or break it. Like, I was like, all right, fuck you people. I'm done. So I slapped Gavin really hard on the belly. Boom. And he kind of jolts and he looks up at me and he's like, oh. And they both started laughing. And they're like, both the nurses are like, oh, he's fine. And I'm like, the fuck he is. He's not fine. Look at him. And so one of the nurses is like, sir, what's your name? He says his name. Okay. Where are you? And he says where he's at. And so I knelt down next to him and I'm like, Gavin, this is what's happening. You're having a really bad reaction. I can either get you admitted to the hospital as an overdose patient, or they're going to give you something to put you in incredible pain. And then he shook his head and they were like, well, we can't discharge you yet, sir. You can't leave now. You can't walk out of here. And so I'm like, or we can stay here for a little bit longer and you can try to shake this off. And he nods and he holds up his three fingers and he's like, that one. And so they're like, yeah, he's fine. He'll be okay. Let him sleep it off. So they let Gavin just sit there, walks out of the bay. And I'm outside my body. I walk over to the window. I look out at the highway. And I'm like, I can't believe this is my fucking life right now. I can't believe this is what's happening. How did he overdose on Benadryl and Oxy? Turns out it's a very common reaction. Nobody said anything. And I'm like, if they knew he was on Oxy, why did they give him Benadryl? Nobody said anything. I don't even know if they looked at his chart to see what he was on before they gave him it. I wasn't there. So we waited an hour. At that point, he was able to sit up. He was able to walk to the bathroom. And then they were like, why don't you go pull the car up? So I did. I went out and got the car. I pulled it to the front. He came out in a wheelchair. They put him in the car. Meanwhile, I had called my mom to tell her everything that happened. And I'm like, I'm going to break here pretty soon. I can feel it. I know it's coming. I'm just going to break. And she's like, then, just drive carefully, get home as soon as possible. Call me when you get home, take a cold shower, and let yourself have a cry. So we did. On the way home, I broke on the highway, bawling hysterically, praying that I don't get into a car accident. And Gavin's like, whoa, what's going on? And he's talking so slow because he's so high. And I spilled it. I just told him everything. I told him everything that had happened. And he was he was like offended. He was so pissed. He was like, do you think they give me 2 bags of Benadryl? And I'm like, I don't know, honey. I mean, this was his 4th chemo session. He had been on Oxy for 3 of them at this point. This had never happened. Granted, he was on Oxy and a shorter distance, between each dose. So he had more in his body. So I'm sure it was because of that. But he was really pissed that nobody had actually said Benadryl and Oxy don't work well together. Do you want it? Right? He was pissed. So that night he had the shakes. He drenched, cold, everything you can think of in terms of detoxing. That's what happened. All night long. I'm crying. I'm hysterical. He's in pain, sweating, crying, wants to quit. We were so fucking tired of it. And then we had to get back to the hospital the next day. Being a caregiver for somebody going through a life-altering, life-threatening disease is the hardest thing I've ever done. I'm sure it's the hardest thing you've ever done. It is not for the faint of heart. And if you think there's something wrong with the person that you're caregiving for, do not let the medical professionals blow it off. Keep saying it until they listen. I'm going to leave it there because I'm sure you're as exhausted as I am. I'm grateful that you hung out and listened to this part of my story. It's hard being a caregiver for your spouse. It's hard being a caregiver, period. Being a family caregiver to the person you're married to will make or break you. For Gavin and I, it changed our relationship. I think it strengthened our relationship. We're very different people. But we've had to work at it. Please remember to be good to yourself. If you're a caregiver, remember it's okay to have someone else do the dishes. I love you.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.